Birds were singing outside her kitchen window on the balmy day in spring. Afterwards, Ella replayed the scene in her mind so many times that, rather than a fragment from the past, it felt like an ongoing moment still happening somewhere out there in the universe. There they were sitting around the table having a late family lunch on a Saturday afternoon. Her husband was filling his plate with fried chicken legs, his favorite food. Evie was playing with his knife and fork like drumsticks, while his twin, Ollie, was trying to calculate how many bites of which food she could eat as she not to ruin her diet of 650 calories a day. Janet, who was a freshman at Mount Holyoke College nearby, seemed lost in her thought as she spread cream cheese on another slice of bread. Also at the table sat Aunt Esther, who had stopped by to drop off one of her famous marble cakes and then stayed on for lunch. Ella had a lot of work to do afterward, but she was not ready to leave the table just yet. Lately, they did not have too many shared family meals, and she saw this as golden chance for everyone to reconnect. Esther, did Ella give you the good news? David asked suddenly. She found a great job. Though Ella had graduated with a degree in English literature and loved fiction, she had not done much in the field after college, other than editing small pieces for women magazines, attending a few book clubs, and occasionally writing book reviews for some local papers. That was all. There was a time when she had aspired to become a prominent book critic, but then she simply accepted the fact that life had carried her elsewhere, turning her into an industrious housewife with 3 kids and endless domestic responsibilities. Not that she complained, being the mother, the wife, the dog walker, and the housekeeper kept her busy enough. She did not have to be breadwinner on top of all this. Though none of his feminist friends from Smith College approved of her choice, she was satisfied to be a stay-at-home mom and grateful that she and her husband could afford it. Besides, she had never abandoned her passion for books and still considered herself a voracious reader. A few years ago, things had begun to change. The children were growing up, and they made it clear that they did not need her as much as they once had. Realizing that she had too much time to spare and no one spent it with, Ella had considered how it might be to find a job. David had encouraged her, but opportunities that came her way, and when she did, potential employers were always looking for someone younger or more experienced. Afraid of being rejected over and over, she had simply let the subject drop. Nevertheless, in May 2008, whatever obstacle had impeded in her from finding a job all these years unexpectedly vanished. 2 weeks shy of her 40th birthday, she found herself working for a literary agency based in Boston. It was her husband who found her the job through one of his clients, or perhaps through one of his mistresses. Oh, it's no big deal, Ella rushed to explain now. I am only a part-time reader for a literary agent, but David seemed determined not to let her think too little of her new job. Come on, let them, it's a well-known agency, he urged, nudging her, and when she refused to comply, he heartily agreed with himself. It's a prestigious place, Esther. You should see the other assistants, girls and boys fresh out of the best colleges. Ella is the only one going back to work after being a housewife for years. Now, is not she something? Ella wondered if deep inside her husband felt guilty about keeping her away from her career, or else about cheating on her, these being the only 2 explanations she could think of as to why he was now going overboard in his enthusiasm. Still smiling, David concluded, this is what I call chutzpah. We are all proud of her. She is a prize, always was, said Aunt Esther, in a voice so sentimental that it sounded as if Ella had left the table and was gone for good. They all gazed at her lovingly. Even Albie did not make a cynical remark, and Ollie for once seemed to care about something other than her looks. Ella forced exhaustion that she had never experienced before. She secretly prayed for her something to change the subject. Janet, her older daughter, must have heard the prayer, for the suddenly chimed in, I have some good news too. All heads turned towards her. faces beaming with expectation. Scott and I have decided to marry, Janity announced. Oh, I know what you guys are going to say. That we have not finished college yet and all that, but you have got to understand we both feel ready for the next big move. An awkward silence descended upon the kitchen table as the warmth that had carried them just a moment ago evaporated. Orly and Evie exchanged blank looks, and Aunt Esther froze with her hand tightened around a glass of apple juice. David put his fork aside as if he had no appetite left and squinted Janity with his light brown eyes that were deeply creased with smile lines and the corners. However, right now he was anything but smiling. His mouth had drawn into a pout as though he had just downed a swig of vinegar. Great, I expected you to share my happiness, but I get this cold treatment instead, Janity winked. You just said you were getting married, remarked David, as if Janity did not know what she had said and needed to be informed. Dad, I know it seems a bit too soon, but Scott proposed to me and the other day and I have already said yes. But why? Asked Ella. From the way Janity looked at her, Ella reckoned that was not the kind of question her daughter had expected. She would rather have been asked when or how. In either case, it meant that she could start shopping of her wedding dress. The question why was another matter altogether and had completely caught her off guard. Because I love him, I guess. Janity's tone was slightly condescending. Honey, what I meant was, why the rush? Insisted Ella. Are you pregnant or something? Aunt Esther twitched in her chair, her face turned, her anguish visible. She took an antacid tablet from her pocket and started chewing on it. I am going to be an uncle, Evie said, giggling. Ella held Janity's hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. You can always tell us the truth. You know that, right? We will stand by you no matter what. Mom, will you please stop that? Janity snapped as she pulled her hand away. This has nothing to do with pregnancy. You are embarrassing me. I was just trying to help. Ella responded calmly. Calmness being a state she had been lately finding harder and harder to achieve. By insulting me, you mean apparently the only way you can see Scott and me getting married is me being knocked up? Does it ever occur to you that I might want to marry this guy because I love him? We have been dating for 8 months now. Alice stirred a scarf from Ella. Oh yeah, as if you could tell a man's character in 8 months. Your father and I have married for almost 20 years and even we can't claim to know everything about each other. 8 months is nothing in a relationship. It could go only 6 days to create the entire universe, said Evie, beaming. But cold stares from everyone at the table forced him back into silence. Sensing the escalating tension, David, his eyes fixed on his elder daughter, his brow furrowed in thought, interjected, Honey, what your mom is trying to say is that dating is one thing, marrying is quite another. But Dad, did you think we would date forever? Janity asked, drawing in a deep breath. Ella said, to be perfectly blunt, we were expecting you to find someone better. You are too young to get involved in any serious relationship. You know what I am thinking, Mom? Janity said in a voice so flat to be unrecognizable. I am thinking you are projecting your own fears onto me. But just because you married so young and had a baby when you were my age, that doesn't mean I am going to make the same mistake. Ella blushed crimson as if slapped in the face. From deep within, she remembered the difficult pregnancy that had resulted in Janity's premature birth. As a baby and then as a toddler, her daughter had drained all of her energy, which was why she had waited 6 years before getting pregnant again. Sweetheart, we were happy for you when you started dating Scott, David said cautiously, trying a different strategy. He's a nice guy, but who knows what you will be thinking after graduation. Things might be very different then. Janity gave a small nod that conveyed little more than faint acquiescence. Then she said, is this because Scott is not Jewish? David rolled his eyes in disbelief. He had always taken pride in being an open-minded and cultural father, avoiding negative remarks about race, religion or gender in the house. Janity, however, seemed relentless. Turning to her mother, she asked, "Can you look me in the eye and tell me you had still be making the same objections if Scott were a young Jewish man named Aaron?" Janet's voice kneaded with bitterness and sarcasm, and Ella feared that was more of that welling up inside her daughter. "Sweetheart, I will be completely honest with you. Even if you might not like it, I know how wonderful it is to be young and in love. Believe me, I do. But to get married to someone from a different background is a big gamble. And as your parents, we want to make sure you are doing the right thing. And how do you know your right thing is the right thing for me?" The question threw Ella off a little. She sighed and massaged her forehead as it on the verge of a migraine. "I love him, Mom. Does that mean anything to you? Do you remember that word from somewhere? He makes me heart beat faster. I can't live without him." Ella heard herself chuckle. It was not her intention to make fun of her daughter's feelings. Not at all, but that was probably what her laughing to herself sounded like. For reasons unknown to her, she felt extremely nervous. She had fights with Janet before, hundreds of them, but today it felt as though she were quarreling with something else, something bigger. "Mom, have not you ever been in love?" Janet retorted, a hint of contempt creeping into her tone. "Oh, give me a break. Stop daydreaming and get real. Will you? You are being so..." Ella's eyes darted toward the window, hunting for a dramatic word until finally she came up with romantic. "What's wrong with being romantic?" Janet asked, sounding offended. Really, what was wrong with being romantic? Ella wondered. Since when was she so annoyed by romanticism? Unable to answer the questions tugging at the edges of her mind, she continued all the same. "Come on, honey, which century are you living in? Just get it your head. Women don't marry the man they fall in love with. When push come to shove, they choose the guy who will be a good father and a reliable husband. Love is only a sweet feeling bound to come and quickly go away." When she finished talking, Ella turned to her husband. David had clasped his hands in front of him, slowly as if through water, and was looking at her. He had never seen her before. "I know why you are doing this," Janet said. "You are jealous of my happiness and my youth. You want to make an unhappy housewife out of me. You want me to be you, Mom." Ella felt a strange sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach, as if she had a giant rock sitting there. Was she an unhappy wife? A middle-aged woman trapped in a failing marriage? Was this how her children saw her, and her husband too? What about friends and neighbors? Suddenly she had the feeling that everyone around her secretly pitied her, and the suspicion was so painful that she gasped. "You should apologize to your mom," David said, turning to Janet with a frown on his face. "It's all right. I don't expect an apology," Ella said dejectedly. Janet gave her mother a mock leer, and just like that, she pushed back her chair, threw her napkin aside, and walked out of the kitchen. After the minute, Orly and Elvis silently followed suit, either in an unusual act of solidarity with their elder sister, or because they had gotten bored of all his adult talk. Aunt Esther left next, mumbling some poor accuse while chewing furiously on her last antacid tablet. David and Ella remained at the table, and intense awkwardness hanging in the air between them. It pained Ella to have his face this void, which, as they both knew, had nothing to do with Janet or any of their children. David grabbed the fork and he had put aside and inspected it for a while. "So, should I conclude that you didn't marry the man you loved?" "Oh, please, that's not what I meant." "What is you meant then?" David said, still talking to the fork. "I thought you were in love with me when we got married." "I was in love with you," Ella said, but could not help adding, "back then." "So when did you stop loving me?" David asked, deadpan. Ella looked at her husband in astonishment, like someone who had never seen her reflection before and who now held a mirror to her face. Had she stopped loving him? It was a question she had never asked herself before. She wanted to respond, but lacked not so much the will as the words. Deep inside, she knew it was the two of them should be concerned about, not their children, but instead they were doing what they both were best at, letting the day go by, the routine take over, and time run its course of inevitable topple. She started to cry, unable to hold back. His continuing sadness that had, without her knowledge, become a part of who she is. David turned his anguishment face away. They both knew he hated to see her cry just as much as she hated to cry in front of him. Fortunately, the phone rang just then, saving them. David picked it up. Hello? Yes. She's here. Hold on, please. Ella pushed herself together and spoke up, doing her best to sound in good spirits. Yes, this is Ella. Hi, this is Michelle. Sorry to bother you over the weekend, chipped a young woman's voice. It's just that yesterday Steve wanted me to check in with you and I simply forgot. Did you have a chance to start working on the manuscript? Oh, Ella sighed, only now remembering the task awaiting her. Her first assignment at the literacy agency was to read a novel by an unknown European author. She was then expected to write an extensive report on it. Tell him not to worry. I've already started reading. Ella lied. Ambitious and headstrong, Michelle was the kind of person she did not want to upset on her first assignment. Oh good, oh good. How is it? Ella paused, puzzled as to what to say. She did not know anything about the manuscript except that it was a historical novel centered on the life of the famous mystic poet Rumi, who she learned was called the Shakespeare of the Islamic world. David Heller marked as she was learned was called the Shakespeare of the Islamic world. Oh, it's very mystical. Ella chuckled, hoping to cover with a joke. But Michelle was all business, right? She said flatly, listen, I think you need to get on this. It might take longer than you expect to write a report on a novel like that. There was a distant muttering on the phone as Michelle's voice trailed off. Ella imagined her juggling several tasks simultaneously, checking emails, reading a review on one of her authors, taking a bite her tuna salad sandwich and polishing her fingernails, all while talking on the phone. Are you still there? Michelle asked a minute later. Yes, I am. Good. Listen, it's crazy in here. I need to go. Just keep in mind the deadline is in 3 weeks. I know, Ella said abruptly, trying to sound more determined. I will make the deadline. The truth was, Ella was not sure she wanted to evaluate the manuscript at all. In the beginning, she had been so eager and confident. It had felt thrilling to be the first one to read an unpublished novel by an unknown author and to play however small a role in his fate. But now she was not sure if she could concentrate on a subject as irrelevant to her life as Sufism and a time distance as the 13th century. Michelle must have detected her hesitation. Is there a problem? She asked. When no answer came, she grew instant. Listen, you can confide in me. After a bit of silence, Ella decided to tell her the truth. It's just that I'm not sure I am in the right state of mind these days to concentrate on a historical novel. I mean, I'm interested in Rumi and all that, but still, the subject is alien to me. Perhaps you could give me another novel, something I could more easily relate to. That's just a skewed approach, said Michelle. You think you can work better with books you know something about? Not at all. Just because you live in the state, you can't expect to edit only novels that take place in Massachusetts, right? That's not what I meant, Ella said, and immediately realized that she had uttered the same sentence too many times this afternoon. She glanced at her husband to see if he, too, had noticed this, but David's expression was hard to decipher. Most of the time, we have to read books that have nothing to do with our lives. That's part of our job. Just this week, I finished working on a book by an Iranian woman who used to operate a brothel in Tehran and had to flee the country. Should I have told her to send the manuscript to an Iranian agency instead? No, of course not, Ella mumbled, feeling silly and guilty. Is not connecting people to distant lands and cultures one of the strengths of good literature? Sure, it is. Listen, forgot what I said. You will have a report on your desk before the deadline. Ella considered hating Michelle for treating her as if she were the dullest person alive and hating herself for allowing this to happen. Wonderful, that's the spirit, Michelle concluded in her sing-song voice. Don't get me wrong, but I think you should bear in mind that there are dozens of people out there who would love to have your job, and most of them are almost half your age. That's all keep you motivated. When Ella hung up the phone, she found David watching her, his face solemn and reserved. He seemed to be waiting for them to pick up where they had left off. But she did not feel like mulling over their daughter's future anymore, if that was what they had been worrying about in the first